Welcome to the world of science fiction stories, and don't forget to like, share, and subscribe my channel. Enjoy the listening. The galaxy's strongest species discovered the truth about humans sitting at the back. Here's the thing about humans. They're weird. And I don't mean the standard, oh, look at those funny bipeds with their bizarre obsession with fermented grain juice kind of weird. No, it's much more subtle than that. Oh, sorry, I should introduce myself. The name's Vex Torek, senior military analyst for the Galactic Coalition. I'd studied battle tactics of 17 sentient species across 12 star systems. I've written dissertation-length analysis on the hunting techniques of the Crudian war beast and the defensive formations of the crystalline frickin'. I am, not to toot my own dorsal horn, somewhat of an expert on interspecies combat strategy. And yet, humans continue to baffle me. You're obsessing again, Vex, my colleague Narelle said, her four eyes blinking in that asynchronous pattern that indicated amusement. Your neck frills are doing that twitchy thing. I smoothed down my frills with a three-fingered hand and glared at her across our shared office space. I am not obsessing. I am observing. There's a difference. You've been staring at the same security footage for 3 rotation cycles, she pointed out, gesturing to my holoscreen where, yes, I had indeed been replaying the same clip from yesterday's Galactic Security Council meeting. What's so fascinating about a bunch of diplomats sitting around arguing about trade routes? It's not what they're saying. I paused the footage and zoomed in on the far corner of the chamber. It's where they're sitting. 4 humans, representatives from that backwater mudball they called Earth, were clustered together in the rearmost section of the grand chamber. They had arrived early, as they always did, and had chosen seats by the wall, far from the central speaking platform, where the draconian ambassador was currently pontificating about reduced tariffs on dilithium exports. So they liked the cheap seats. What's your point? Nara snorted, her breath making the small plants on her desk rustle. My point, my dear Zell, is that they always, and I mean always, choose those seats or seats like them, back corner, near an exit, full view of the room. I tapped my stylus against my jawline ridges. Did you notice where Ambassador Chin sat during the emergency evacuation briefing last month? Can't say that I did, because unlike you, I'm not a creepy stalker, she laughed. Back wall, left corner, next to the service corridor. I pulled up another file. And before that, at the centennial celebration, their entire delegation chose tables along the perimeter of the banquet hall. Not one of them sat in the central area where all the important dignitaries were placed. Maybe they're just antisocial, Nara suggested, turning back to her own work. Or shy. Or gasped, maybe they just like those seats. I flicked my tongue in annoyance. The devourers of Nix's 7 are antisocial. The gaseous clouds of Japerian are shy. Humans are, I struggled to find the right word. Calculating. Nara rolled all 4 eyes simultaneously. You're being ridiculous. They're barely Category 3 on the Galactic Threat Assessment. No natural armor, no significant toxicity, no enhanced strength or speed. They can't even regenerate lost limbs, for void's sake. That's what makes it so strange, I insisted. They're practically defenseless by any reasonable standard. Their only real advantage is their unusual endurance, but that hardly matters in modern combat, and yet, I let the sentence hang there as I watched the footage again. One of the humans, a female named Morgan Ray, briefly made eye contact with the camera before returning her attention to the proceedings. Was it my imagination, or had there been a knowing glint in those flat, non-compound eyes? You give them too much credit, Vex, Nara said dismissively. They're novelties. Amusing little creatures that somehow stumbled onto faster-than-light travel before figuring out how to stop killing each other over imaginary territorial lines. The Coalition only admitted them because they have unusually plentiful water reserves and make surprisingly good pastries. I grunted noncommittally. Perhaps she was right. Perhaps I was seeing patterns where none existed. It wouldn't be the first time my analytical mind had led me down a wormhole of speculation. But still, I'm heading to the Central Archives, I announced, standing abruptly. There's a briefing on human military history that I want to review. Waste of time, Nara called after me as I headed for the door. You'd learn more studying the mating habits of lunar dust mites, perhaps. But something about those strange, soft-skinned aliens from Earth nagged at me. They were like an equation that didn't quite balance, a tactical anomaly I couldn't explain away. And in my experience, anomalies were either meaningless flukes or the most important factor you'd overlooked. I was determined to find out which category humans fell into. The incident. The Galactic Summit for Interstellar Cooperation happens once every 12 standard cycles. It's the diplomatic equivalent of those gaudy cosmic supernovas, rare, overwhelming, and impossible to ignore. Every sentient species sends their most important representatives, which means the room is filled with more inflated egos than a puffer-oni mating display. Naturally, I was there, not as a participant, void forbid, but as security oversight. My job was simple: watch for threats, report anomalies, and try not to die of boredom, while Ambassador Grothar of the Vapan Hive droned on about proper mineral rights etiquette for the 14th consecutive hour. "Kill me now," muttered senior diplomat Case beside me, his crystalline form glittering under the chamber's artificial lighting as he subtly shifted to a more comfortable arrangement of his facets. "If I have to listen to one more word about the sacred nature of tungsten deposits, I'm going to shatter myself." I chuckled but kept my eyes moving across the grand chamber. The summit was being held in the famous Hall of Convergence on Nexus Station, a massive amphitheater-style room with concentric rings of seating surrounding the central speaking platform. The most prestigious delegations occupied the innermost rings, with status diminishing as you move outward. And there in the outermost ring, pressed against the back wall, the humans. 4 of them, looking ridiculously small next to the hulking Granarians to their left. As usual, they positioned themselves near a service exit, their backs to the wall with clear sight lines to all major entrances. "Still obsessing over the monkeys?" Casey's asked, following my gaze. "Humans," I corrected automatically. "And I'm not obsessing, I'm analyzing." "Whatever helps you sleep during your Dorsey phase," he snickered. I was about to respond with a particularly clever insult when the first explosion hit. It wasn't particularly large, as explosions go, just enough to demolish the main entrance and send a cloud of debris billowing into the chamber. Before anyone could react, the emergency lighting failed, plunging the room into darkness broken only by the glow of various bioluminescent delegates. The cacophony was instant and deafening. The Vuan began their high-pitched alarm shriek. The Garans activated their defensive plating with a series of metallic clangs. The gaseous vapor representatives expanded in panic, nearly suffocating the unfortunate Aquilin beside them. Ambassador Zelnor of the mighty Draconian Empire, widely considered the most fearsome warrior species in the galaxy, flipped over his own chair in his haste to find cover. "What in the 7 moons is happening?" Case's voice had risen 2 full octaves as his crystalline body vibrated with fear. "Unknown," I replied, trying to maintain professional calm while fighting my own instinct to extend my defensive neck frills. "Possible terrorist attack. Possible." A second explosion cut me off, this one from the secondary entrance. More screens. More chaos. The chamber guards were trying to restore order, but they were being overwhelmed by panicking diplomats. That's when I noticed something odd. The humans weren't panicking. In the dim emergency lighting that had finally sputtered to life, I could see them clearly. They had moved, yes, but not in the random frightened patterns of the other delegates. Their movements were coordinated, purposeful. 2 had taken flanking positions by their exit door. 1, the female Morgan Ray, had pulled out some kind of small device and appeared to be scanning the room. The 4th, a male whose name I couldn't recall, was calmly speaking into a communication device while simultaneously pulling what I recognized as a compact human weapon from beneath his formal attire. "By the void," I whispered. They were prepared for this. A third explosion rocked the chamber, and in poured a dozen armed figures in unmarked combat suits. Mercenaries or possibly terrorists, it hardly mattered. What mattered was that they were efficient, organized, and clearly intent on taking hostages. Nobody moved. The lead attacker bellowed through a voice amplifier. "The next species to so much as twitch gets vaporized." The room fell into terrified silence, broken only by the whimpering of a young frickin' diplomat whose crystalline appendages were quietly cracking with stress. "That's better," the attacker continued. "Now we're looking for..." Whatever they were looking for, I never found out, because at that precise moment the lights went out again. Only this time, it wasn't because of the attackers. And in the new darkness, I heard something I'll never forget. 4 distinct clicks, followed by a human voice, calm, almost bored, saying, "Well, this is awkward." What happened next would change my understanding of humanity forever. The observation. 3 days after what galactic news networks were calling the Summit Incident, I sat in my office surrounded by hollow projections of security footage. Not just from the attack, though I'd watched those recordings approximately 73 times, but from dozens of diplomatic functions over the past standard year. "You look terrible," Nara announced as she entered, carrying a nutrient sphere that pulsed with the unappetizing green glow of processed algae. Have you entered your dormy phase at all since the attack? No time, I muttered, manipulating the footage with quick gestures. Look at this. I expanded one recording that showed the human delegation at the Proximan Trade Conference. Same pattern, back of the room, clear view of exits, positioned with their backs to a wall. So they're creatures of habit. Fascinating, Nara said with exaggerated enthusiasm. Now can you please explain why you've become even more obsessed with them after they saved your life? I flicked my tongue in annoyance. They didn't save my life. They neutralized a terrorist threat that happened to be in my general vicinity. Right. And the fact that Ambassador Ray personally escorted you to safety while her colleagues were busy disarming bombs and subduing professional mercenaries, that was just coincidence. Morgan, I corrected absent-mindedly. Ambassador Morgan Ray. And yes, I believe it was tactical expediency. I pulled up another recording. Here, the Centaurian ballet reception. Look where they're standing. Nara sighed dramatically. Vex, the entire coalition is talking about how 4 unarmed humans took down 12 heavily armed attackers without a single casualty. The Draconians are embarrassed. The Vaspian Queen is demanding an investigation into how humans acquired combat training that rivals her elite guards. And you're fixated on where they stand at parties. It's all connected, I insisted, my frills extending with excitement. Don't you see? They knew. Somehow they knew trouble was coming. It wasn't just quick thinking. They were prepared. So you think they had inside information, that they knew about the attack? Nara's antenna twitched with concern. No, not specifically. I struggled to articulate my theory. I think they're always prepared. Look at the pattern. They always position themselves optimally for both observation and quick exit. They always have sightlines to all entrances. And at the summit, they were armed. Subtly, but definitely armed. Nara considered this. So you're saying? I'm saying they've evolved to expect danger, I concluded. And I need to know why. Which is how I found myself, later that day, sitting across from Lucas Bennett, Deputy Human Ambassador to the Galactic Coalition, in a quiet corner of the diplomatic lounge. Thank you for meeting with me, Ambassador Bennett, I said, studying him carefully. Bennett was a tall specimen for his species, with skin the color of rich soil and a completely hairless head that gleamed under the ambient lighting. His face arranged itself into what I recognized as a smile, but there was something watchful in his eyes. Please call me Lucas, he said, taking a sip from his container of stimulant liquid, coffee, I recalled from my research. And it's no problem at all. After what happened at the summit, I'm getting used to being popular. Yes, about that. I activated my recording device with a flick of my wrist. Your actions during the incident were remarkable. Bennett shrugged, that peculiarly human gesture of affected nonchalance. We got lucky. Right place, right time. Except it wasn't luck, was it? I leaned forward. You positioned yourselves strategically. You were armed at a diplomatic function. You responded with trained precision to a crisis that left species with 10 times your physical capabilities paralyzed with fear. For a moment, Bennett was silent, those alien eyes studying me with unsettling intensity. Then he laughed, a sound like water bubbling over rocks. You've been watching us, he said. It wasn't a question. Professionally, I clarified. I'm a military analyst. It's my job to notice patterns. And what pattern have you noticed? Analyst tore back. I took a breath. That humans always put their backs to the wall. That you always know where the exits are. That you're always ready. Bennett's smile shifted slightly, becoming something older and sharper. Ah, he said softly. You've noticed that, have you? The research. So you're telling me, I said, staring at Lucas Bennett across the table, that this behavior is instinctual. Bennett's face did that peculiar human thing where multiple micro-expressions flashed across it in quick succession. Amusement, caution, assessment. Human faces were frustratingly complex. Not entirely, he replied, finishing his coffee. It's more of a cultural habit, reinforced by training. Look, why don't I authorize you for access to some of our basic military history? Nothing classified. Just publicly available information that might help you understand. Understand. I tried not to look too eager. That would be professionally valuable. I'm sure it would, Bennett said with that strange, knowing smile. Check your data access in about an hour. True to his word, by the time I returned to my office, my authorization level for Earth's historical database had been significantly upgraded. I immediately dove in, ignoring Nara's concerned comments about my unhealthy fixation. What I discovered kept me awake for 3 consecutive dormant cycles. Earth's military history was extensive, shockingly so. While most advanced species had a period of martial development before achieving global cooperation, humans had been fighting each other continuously for their entire recorded history. Their planet had never, not once, experienced complete peace. This can't be right, I muttered, cross-referencing data points. They've had weapons of planetary destruction for over 300 cycles and haven't unified their governance. Even more baffling, their combat development hadn't followed the standard pattern. Most species developed increasingly centralized and formalized military structures as they advanced. Humans had those, yes, but alongside them had evolved an entire parallel track of what they called asymmetric warfare and guerrilla tactics. I pulled up footage of historical Earth conflicts, watching in fascination as small groups of fighters consistently outmaneuvered and sometimes defeated much larger, better-equipped forces through superior positioning, ambush tactics, and environmental awareness. Analyst Torback. A voice interrupted my research trance. I looked up to find Director Finks looming in my doorway, his ceremonial eye stalks quivering with what I recognized as administrative displeasure. Director, I was just researching. Humans. Yes, I'm aware, his primary mouth twisted into a grimace. Your colleague Zell has expressed concerns about your focus since the summit incident. I smoothed my neck frills, trying to project professional composure. Sir, I believe my research has significant security implications for the Coalition. Explain. The director settled his massive frame into the reinforced chair across from my desk, which creaked alarmingly under his weight. I quickly organized my thoughts. Humans exhibit combat readiness and situational awareness far beyond what their Category 3 threat classification would suggest. Their historical development on Earth has produced a species that never stopped evolving combat tactics. While we were busy developing philosophical frameworks for post-conflict societies, they were perfecting the art of threat assessment and rapid response. Director Finax's secondary eyes narrowed. Are you suggesting they pose a danger to the Coalition? No, I said quickly. Not at all. In fact, quite the opposite. Their actions at the summit saved numerous lives. But I do believe we've misunderstood them fundamentally. I pulled up a series of architectural diagrams from Earth. Look at this. Even their recreational buildings, restaurants, entertainment venues, educational facilities, all have multiple exit points, emergency protocols, designated security features. Their entire civilization is designed with a constant awareness that danger might appear at any moment. Most species outgrow such paranoia, the director observed. That's just it, sir. For humans, it's not paranoia. It's adaptation. I displayed a human evolutionary timeline. Their planet is extraordinarily hazardous. They evolved as both predator and prey simultaneously. They were never the strongest, fastest, or most naturally armored species on their world, so they developed acute threat perception and response mechanisms. I showed him footage from the summit attack. Notice how Ambassador Ray constantly scans the room. That's not random. Humans call it maintaining situational awareness. It's taught to their military, their law enforcement, even their civilian population in some regions. The director watched in silence, his multiple brains visibly processing this information. And this business of always positioning themselves with their backs to walls, he finally asked. A tactical fundamental they call the Cooper Color Code, named after one of their military theorists. I displayed the relevant data. It's a system for awareness levels. White is unaware. Yellow is alert. Orange is focused on a specific threat. Red is engaged in combat. Most species in the Coalition exist primarily in white state during diplomatic functions. Humans never do. They consistently maintain yellow awareness, alert and prepared, constantly monitoring for threats while appearing relaxed. I showed more summit footage. They sit at the back because it provides optimal observation positions, minimizes blind spots, and offers access to exits. In their historical combat scenarios, controlling your surroundings and maintaining escape routes often meant the difference between survival and death. Fascinating, the director murmured, his digestive tentacles curling with interest. But if they're so combat-oriented, why have they shown no expansionist tendencies since joining the Coalition? I hesitated. For that, I don't know yet, but I have a theory. Their psychology text referred to something called the sheepdog mentality. Most of their population are what they call sheep, peaceful, cooperative, nonviolent. A small percentage are wolves, predatory and dangerous. But a crucial third category exists: sheepdogs. Individuals who have the same capacity for violence as the wolves but use it protectively rather than predatorily. I leaned forward. Director, I think the humans who interact with the coalition are their sheepdogs. They're constantly vigilant not because they want conflict, but because they're programmed to protect. Director Fnax was silent for a long moment. That's an interesting theory, Analyst Torback. Continue your research. I want a full report by next cycle. After he left, I turned back to my screens, feeling a strange mixture of professional satisfaction and personal unease. If I was right about humans, the implications were significant. We had categorized them based on their physical capabilities, not recognizing that their true strength lay elsewhere, in their constant, instinctive readiness for a universe that might turn hostile at any moment. I pulled up more data, determined to understand. The revelation. I was dreaming of Earth when my communication unit jolted me awake. Not that I'd ever been to the human homeworld. Few non-humans had, but after immersing myself in their history for days, my subconscious had constructed a vivid simulation. A world of towering natural formations, sprawling oceans, and predators lurking in every shadow. In my dream, I'd been a primitive human, constantly watching, waiting, listening for threats that might emerge from the darkness. Analyst Torback, I croaked into my calm, my voice rough from sleep. Vex, thank the void, you answered. Nara's voice was pitched higher than normal, a clear sign of distress in our species. There's been another incident at the Coalition Embassy on Proxima Station. You need to get down here. I was fully alert instantly. Casualties? None. That's the weird part. The humans. The humans what? Just get down here. 20 minutes later, I was stepping through the secure entrance of the Coalition Embassy, flashing my military analyst credentials at the guards. The scene inside was controlled chaos. Security personnel from a dozen species hurried about. Scanning equipment beeped, and in the center of it all stood Lucas Bennett, looking irritatingly poised in what humans called a suit. Ah, Analyst Torback. He greeted me as though we'd arranged to meet for a casual drink, rather than in the aftermath of what was clearly a security breach. I had a feeling they'd call you in. What happened? I demanded, noting the cordoned-off area behind him where technical specialists were examining what appeared to be a disabled explosive device. Bennett's expression shifted to something marginally more serious. Someone left us a present. Luckily, we found it before the party started. I stared at him, processing this. The diplomatic reception. That's not for another 3 hours. 5 hours and 17 minutes, to be precise, he corrected. We always arrive early to check the venue. You sweep for explosives before every diplomatic function. I couldn't keep the incredulity from my voice. Bennett looked genuinely puzzled. Don't you? Before I could respond, Director Finks lumbered over, his primary eyes focused on Bennett while his secondary set swiveled toward me. Ambassador Bennett was explaining how they detected the device. The director said, apparently his security team includes individuals with specialized training in pre-event venue assessment. Standard procedure, Bennett shrugged. Morgan noticed the catering staff seemed off by one person compared to the manifest. Rick, Ambassador Thuron, thought the lighting fixtures had been adjusted since yesterday's briefing. We did a sweep, found that device. Just like that. The director's tone made it clear he found this suspicious. Just like that, Bennett confirmed pleasantly. I couldn't contain myself any longer. You're not surprised, are you? Any of you. You expected this. Bennett's eyes met mine, and for the first time, I saw something that might have been respect. Not this specific threat, no, but we operate under the assumption that threats exist until proven otherwise. That's insane, the director rumbled. The cognitive resources required to maintain such constant vigilance are considerably less than the resources required to recover from an attack, Bennett finished smoothly. Director, would you excuse us? I believe Analyst Torback and I need to have a conversation. To my surprise, the director inclined his massive head and moved away, leaving me alone with Bennett. Walk with me, the human suggested, gesturing toward a quiet corridor. As we moved away from the chaos, I noticed we were heading toward the embassy's observation deck, a circular room with transparent walls offering a spectacular view of the space station and the starfield beyond. The room was currently empty. No one else is here, I observed. Bennett smiled. Good situational awareness. You're learning. Why did you bring me here? Because it's defensible, he replied simply. One entrance, clear sight lines, reinforced walls, and if things go completely sideways, he gestured to an emergency exit pod built into the wall. Options. You think we're in danger right now? I asked, alarmed. Bennett laughed. I'd always think we're in danger, Vex. That's the point you've been missing. He moved to the center of the room and gestured for me to sit opposite him at a small table. Humans have a concept called hypervigilance, he explained. In some contexts, it's considered a psychological disorder, a state of heightened alertness inappropriate to the actual threat level. But what's inappropriate depends entirely on your evolutionary history. And humanity's evolutionary history made hypervigilance appropriate. I said, the pieces finally clicking into place. Bingo! Bennett pointed at me with that odd human gesture of confirmation. Earth is beautiful, Vex. Breathtaking, really. But it's also been trying to kill us since day one. Predators, natural disasters, disease.